You're about to hear now one of the most powerful, meaningful, emotional turning points in all modern music. Of course, it's Beethoven's Fifth. The climactic moment, the incredible emotional turning point, long postponed and long awaited in this symphony, when Beethoven turns round the corner and decides at last to be happy. The whole purpose of Beethoven's Fifth was to make this powerful journey between the storminess, despair, the tragedy of minor to the ecstasy and jubilation of major. Now, this symphony works so well for us. It strikes such a sympathetic chord. We accept so easily that minor represents sadness and major represents happiness. And Beethoven cinched this association also in his Ninth Symphony, which also followed that same course of a journey between minor, representing tragedy, and the chorale finale, which stamped the word joy or Freude on the major tonality forever. Now, the finale of Beethoven's Fifth is in fact also a chorale. It's a chorale for orchestra. And we could very easily set a joyous text to it, in which case it might sound like this. My soul doth magnify the Lord. It's perfectly convincing, like one of those Handelian choruses you all love so much. But in 800 AD, when these words were first set to music, this is how that text, my soul doth magnify the Lord, or in Latin, magnificat anima mea Dominum, this is how it sounded. What a difference 1,000 years can make. Well, the tunes that we know as Gregorian chant are actually part of a long oral tradition that goes way back beyond 800 AD when they were first written down. It's part of the liturgy of the early Christian church, and ultimately it goes back to the tunes sung by wandering nomadic peoples throughout the Middle East. Now, the other great influence on our early music, on our early expression in music, came from the ancient Greeks. Now, the Greeks recognized that there were states of conflict and rest in music, and the states of rest they called consonants. These were sounds where sound seemed to be perfectly at rest. And these are the sounds that today we call unisons, octaves, fifths, and fourths. So have a listen. This is consonants. This is what the Greeks called consonants. It was a sound completely at rest. Now, all other sounds were dissonances, a state of acoustic conflict. Sounds like these sounds were interesting, very expressive perhaps, but only possible as a moment along the sure path from consonance to consonance. You can still hear these qualities in this Magnificat by the composer Alexander Agricola, which was written 2,000 years after the Greeks had first defined what consonance was. It's so beautiful. Music could have just stayed this way forever, but for the continuing argument going on since the Greek times about what was admissible as consonance or dissonance. People were still arguing about this in Florence in the 17th century. A group of avant-garde composers and theorists who were trying to recreate Greek drama decided to expand the harmonic vocabulary a bit. And they hit on this new invention called opera, which required a whole new style, a whole new form of harmonic language. And Monteverdi was one of these avant-garde composers. In 1610, he wrote a work for the church, a Magnificat, in fact, which was right on the borderline of old and new music theory. And here is how Monteverdi set the same text, "My soul doth magnify the Lord." That sounds already a lot more modern, closer to us. But only 100 years or so after that, in about 1720, Bach wrote his Magnificat, and of course, that went like this. what a difference. Now we're really up into the modern age. So what has happened in those 100 years? Well, that modern musical revolution that I told you about right up front has finally occurred. And what was it? It was a redefinition of the whole idea of consonance. Consonance had been before a pure acoustical phenomenon, a sound representing universal rest and order. Now it became a heretofore dissonant sound which represented the nature of man. It was expressive. It was dissonant, it was shocking, but it was expressive. And what was that sound of the new modern musical revolution above all? It was the triad. And now we're on our way to the idea of a happy ending. In fact, the germ of the happy ending was right there from the beginning of this revolution. In 1610, when Monteverdi wrote that gorgeous Magnificat that you heard, he ended it like this. What happened right at the end, the whole mood of the piece changed as he went from minor to major. What a jolt that going into major gives us. Did then, does now. Bach, Mozart, Haydn, to name a few, ended their minor compositions with major chords. Famous ones, Toccata and Fugue in D minor by Bach. And even a rebel like Beethoven had ended his third piano concerto, last movement, with a whole section in major. But Beethoven was not one to rest with existing convention. This caused him to be far, far more bold and daring, experimental, violent even, dramatic, tragic with the way he used music and the harmonic language in particular. For example, here's what I mean. Here's a G. If I play this G in itself, it means nothing. But if I fill in an E flat below it, we have this lovely little major third, which sounds quite happy. But if I put in a C below that, suddenly it's all gone sad and minor. These two notes haven't changed. It's just the context has changed. Or the opposite. If I play a minor third, sounding sad, and I fill in this A flat below, it suddenly has a happy sort of cast to it. The context changes, the feeling changes. Beethoven recognized this completely. In fact, this is the essence of what the Beethoven Fifth explores. Beethoven's Fifth is the revolutionary piece. It is because Beethoven revealed this psychological world of major and minor more extremely, more violently than anyone before him had. Beethoven begins ferociously and enigmatically. The silence is here to create suspense. At this moment, we have no idea where this piece is going. We haven't been given enough information. At this moment, we could so easily go on to a major key. Glad you like that. We have no idea what's going to happen. It's not until the almighty second violins come in, cinching their relationship with the bass line, that we understand the piece is truly in C minor and will explore this range of sorrow and despair. Then we come to a second theme. which moves abruptly into E flat major. Major, what a relief already. We thought this was going to be such an unhappy, gloomy piece. Well, it's major, all right, but unfortunately, it's not the major we're looking for. It's not C major, the bright, happy major of the promised land. It's only E flat major. It's okay, it's got 2 notes in common with the C minor triad, but 2 out of 3 is not enough for Ludwig van Beek. But as the piece goes on, it becomes clear that Beethoven has another thought in mind. He centers in on the minor mode, exploring it more and more deeply, more and more of the piece leaning toward minor, until at last we come to this moment where he stops the onward cha-cha-cha-cha-cha-cha rhythm, and we hear this pathetic, sort of operatic cadenza played by the oboe. At this moment, subconsciously it dawns on us that there is no way that this piece can end in major. We move on to a second movement, which for me is the most touching part of the whole symphony. Now, that minor third there at the end that's so expressive, that's the same minor third now that we know so well, the pleading minor third from the first movement. Now, the tune wanders peacefully on in A-flat major, and then we come to a moment of uncertainty. Listen to this. Moment of uncertainty, and then what was that? It was C major. That's the key of the promised land, brought in a blazing scoring of brass. C major, the key of the promised land, it's like a prophetic vision that suddenly emerges out of nowhere into A-flat. I feel that in this movement, Beethoven is saying, thank you, A-flat major, for giving me this wonderful refuge to sing and vary my song. But I can't stay here, as beautiful as this is. I have to try and go on. I have to try and keep my quest to go on to C major, no matter what it may cost. And even though I know I won't be able to get there yet, everything in the movement says C, 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 even the last bars of the piece. Now, the scherzo is a study in perpetual motion. Beethoven brings back C minor in a restless, wind whistling through the rigging of the sails sort of mood. And then he brings back that ba-ba-ba-bam fate motive from the first movement, recast now in the form of a blaring fanfare of hunting horns. Everything churns on into C minor. We suddenly come around the corner, and oh my goodness, we're in C major. is a C major trio using the whole C major scale rattling all over the place. It's a kind of folk dance fugue, and it's full of energy and such promise. We think we must nearly be there now, but it doesn't last. It runs out of energy, loses its direction, the winds take it up, and suddenly there we are back in C minor scherzo land again. Now, the mood couldn't be more lost or lonely. Beethoven has pared all the music down to nearly nothing. It's as if all the flesh has gone off the bones. There's nothing left of that C minor scherzo theme now except a very, very pale pianissimo outline. The timpani plays the rhythmic fade motive. The strings begin to play the theme of the scherzo, turning this way, then that way, aimlessly it seems. And then, right there, as if by chance, they suddenly hit on the combination that takes them round the corner and gathering the energy. Finally, we've gotten to our finale and our happy ending at last. C major. Once Beethoven is here in C major, he makes an absolute feast of C major out of this. It's the celebration of all time, C major. And what does he do? He brings in the piccolo. He brings in a whole bunch of trombones who've been sitting there for the whole movement, staring at this piece of music in front of them in which the first note is C. Now, Mahler, Tchaikovsky, Bruckner, everyone else wrote pieces modeled after this same piece, after the same journey between sadness and joy. And no matter how far afield they wandered in their own styles, they kept to this general plan that Beethoven had set up all these years before. It was this powerful for them. Now, of course, since then, in the 20th century, we've come to a period of time where pieces begin and end almost anyway. We have to ask ourselves the question, as we have now accepted nearly every dissonance, even sounds that were never heretofore thought musical as possible endings of pieces, what is a happy ending right now? What could it be? Well, of course, there are many possible happy endings. For a cocktail pianist, for example, it might be something like this. For Pierre Boulez, it might be something like this. For my friends down in Miami, it might be something like this. It all depends what you have to say. We don't know where this century is going. It's been one of so much experimentation. The language is in flux. You are the ones who are going to have to decide what the true happy ending of today and the future may be from all of the choices so humbly offered to you. But one thing is sure, that for today, for the future, music will never stop resonating to Beethoven's extraordinarily over-the-top happy ending. 29, count them, final bars of C major, and silence.